This is my closed reed rabbit squealer distress call, and what I'm going to do for you is elaborate on appropriate use for this call out in the field, some preservation, and a few tricks. So the number one thing I really stress communicating with just coyotes, not fox, not bobcat, not other predators in the field, but specifically for coyotes, hitting multiple spectrums of tone. So fox calling, bobcat calling can also include a lot of monotone repetitive sounds where you're kind of holding the call like a cigar. You're holding it out where you can really just project one sound, very easy, user-friendly. The big thing with doing this is I'm going to have to take a breath. And the number one important thing blowing through this call, we don't want to forget to breathe. We don't want to hyperventilate. We don't want to get winded. There's a little tiny hole in here. It's about the size of a juice box straw. And when I want to exhaust all of that air from this lung capacity through that little tiny hole, the biggest trick to manipulate that reed where we don't become winded, lightheaded, or hyperventilate is blow a lot of that air on the outside of the call. As we're blowing through the call, when my brain says, hey, you got to take a breath, that's where you really want to start exhausting a lot of that air around the outside of the call, not just through the center of the call. Allowing that air to go around the outside of the call is going to deplete the air that you have in your chest. When you take that nice full breath in, you then have 100% oxygenated lung capacity. So you're not going to get lightheaded or winded. You're not going to hyperventilate. That's one of the biggest things with hand calling, where callers are trying to focus all of this lung capacity through this little tiny hole. Blow a lot of the air on the outside of the call. That's going to prevent you from hyperventilating and appropriately communicating to that animal in the field, so you can do this for a very long time. So don't forget to like this, subscribe to it, and I got a lot more content coming. Another thing I want to explain to people is communicating with fox, bobcat, and having that monotone sound where we can just really hold the call, put it to our mouth, and we're just blowing air through the call. And like I said, when you need to take a breath, you start blowing air around the outside of the call. You can do this for a very long time, as long as you appropriately take your breaths and blow on the outside of the call. There's actually a term for this that woodwind instrument players utilize called cyclical breathing. It's very similar to that, where you can breathe in through the nose as you exhaust air through the mouth. Little hard to master, little hard to practice. If you get into that repetition of cyclical breathing, perfect way to do this to manipulate a hand call. The best and the easiest way is to blow the air on the outside of the barrel. If you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe to this channel because I got a lot more content coming. Being an avid hunter in the outdoors, I'm also focusing attention on whitetail deer early season here in upstate New York, where I live in my demographic. Our season opens up October 1st for whitetail. It also opens up October 1st for coyote. During that time of year, it's pretty warm out. Comfortable temperatures. One high recommendation I have for you as temperatures start decreasing, as temperatures start to decrease, there's a lot of condensation from breath going through the barrel of this call. When you have increased condensation from breath through a little tiny game call and potentially negative temperatures outside, it does increase the chance for reed freeze. You can blow through this all day long and you're not going to create a sound. So a very high recommendation I have is always make sure there's tone. Make sure you can hear the call. When you start getting into cold months with cold temperatures, make sure you didn't deal with reed freeze. The way to do this is hold the call backwards. When I blow the call backwards through the exhaust end of the barrel, as long as I can get air moving through the barrel, I know when I flip it around, I'm gonna have tone. So before you get to the stand and try anything, make sure you have tone and make sure your hand calls didn't freeze up from a potential previous stand that you did. Another thing that you can do is when you're transporting your calls from that property to the next property, take the calls and either put them inside of your outermost layer so they reach the ambient air temperature of body heat, and that's going to prevent your reeds from freezing. Or if it's that cold or you have hesitation, throw them on your dashboard going from one property to the next. Throw that defroster on and just warm the calls up to get any moisture inside in a liquid form in case it froze. And the first thing you do before you step out of your vehicle, blow into it backwards. Blow all of that condensation out that potentially melted in there, and just make sure you have a clear airway in there. If you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe to this channel. I have a lot more information coming. Communicating with coyotes, just coyotes right now. And I've said before, every coyote in anywhere in North America, every single one has ADD. I don't say that to offend anybody, but it's a fact. That coyote has a very, very, very small focus of attention. What I like to do as a hand caller is captivate and keep attention. Long pauses in between calling sets. This is my perspective, and the amount of coyotes that we've taken here in our demographic in upstate New York, this holds true for us. It's not constant calling. We have lots of long pauses in between call sequences. And when I say call sequences, my vocabulary is very limited. There's not an e-caller set up where I'm going to try this sound or the next sound or the next sound. My call sequences go from this time frame to this time frame of silence, to this time frame of calling, to this time frame of silence. My opinion, sometimes silence is your best friend. Sometimes silence can be your best call. What I like people to picture is you howl, you communicate, you squeal, you give a distress tone, and there's the coyote. And we've watched so many coyotes doing what I like to say, coyotes do coyote things. As they're coming in on the approach, it's not a straight line. It's like this. Ooh, I smell a bunny rabbit. Ooh, something took a leak over here. I'm gonna sniff this little pile of feces. I'm gonna go over here. Oh, look, a butterfly. But they're cutting distance on sound, but it's never a straight line. It's like they have ADD. They're losing the focus of attention. So when we're blind calling, quite often what we do is we'll call, we'll communicate, and then we shut up. And what I'm picturing in my head is that coyote doing this, checking everything out in its environment as it was cutting distance on sound. But the big thing is, I don't want to continue to create that sound because I don't want it to turn into white noise. We're going to pause, and then we're going to recaptivate that animal's attention by calling again. That's why we put long pauses in between calling sequences. What I want to talk about now is actually how to manipulate the reed inside of the call. So you as the caller, you are going to be the one that has to listen and recognize how you're blowing air and how you're manipulating the fingers. Everything you do as the caller, blowing air through the call and manipulating your fingers on the end of the barrel, this is creating back pressure. I can blow as hard as I want. If I plug the hole, air cannot pass through. So I'm using a combination of lung capacity and back pressure when I put my finger on the end of the barrel. Hitting multiple spectrums of tone, I want to captivate that animal's attention. I don't want to have that monotone, repetitive sound. I want to sound hurt. I want to sound very injured. I am sick. I am an easy opportunity for a free meal for that animal to come in. That animal, I'm talking about the coyote. So creating the back pressure and lung capacity, I'm going to take that full breath in, and as I blow, I'm going to be rolling. Typically, I'm going to be using my middle finger, my middlemost finger on the hand that I'm holding the barrel. And I'm just going to cradle it right in the crotch of my hand between my pointer finger and my thumb. Like that. Make letter V, letter U. I'm a game call builder. I can only, ergonomically shape a game call to fit so many ways into the human hand. So we flared out right there. Put the palm of your hand out, grasp it right in the crotch, and close. But we're leaving the hole open. That's the goal. We want to leave the hole open. And this is where I take my middle finger to roll it inside of the barrel to create that back pressure. So what I'm going to do as an example is just one breath of air, and I'm going to blow through it with no back pressure. Sounds like a party favor. I'm going to add manipulation from my finger to create back pressure with the same amount of air volume. You can hear that high pitch to low pitch, and I'm really trying to blow just the same amount of air through that reed. So, as a caller, we want to hit so many spectrums of tone to communicate with the coyote. Very erratic. So what we're going to do, you as the caller, this is where you need to practice to get that reed to manipulate so you're hearing what you want to create. That's your practice. You have to practice this. So as you blow through the call, you're going to manipulate your finger on the end of the barrel. I use my middle finger, and that's another reason I flare the end of the barrel. So when I have it on the lathe, I flare with the tool so it's not just a flat hole. This is another thing, the time of year. If we're focusing attention on coyotes during the latter months and it's starting to get pretty cold out, I don't use gloves. I never use gloves. I can't do it. I never like using gloves. But having that flare right here on the end, it's not a flat surface with a 1/2 inch hole in the middle. You could totally get away using gloves, but you have to listen to what your fingers are doing to manipulate the reed appropriately. So you'll flare your finger over the end of the barrel as you're breathing and just listen to it. Another thing you can do as you're blowing through the call, you're kind of chuckling from the chest, like you're muffling a cough. Like you're cold, you're shivering, and you're going to get that manipulation of air with a little bit more bursts of air, a little higher, a little lower, a little higher, a little lower, and then combine it with, combine that breath of air, the fluttering of air, with reed manipulation with back pressure. I cannot stress it enough, hitting multiple spectrums of tone. The other thing you can do is I like to flutter my tongue sometimes. If somebody has a Lucky Duck or a Fox Pro or an e-collar, listen to that, I think, excuse me. If you have an e-collar, this is something you can go into your archives of your e-collar and listen to like a woodpecker distress. And listen to that sound. I tried doing this a few years ago and had great reflection. Take the tongue off the roof of your mouth and you're just going to create this sound. Blow that through the call. You're creating so many more opportunities to create that multiple spectrum of tone to really captivate that coyote's attention with one call. Fluttering your voice, that chuckle, like that cough you're trying to hold in where it's just not monotone, lots of reflection, lots of spectrum of tone. Chuckle your voice like you're holding in a cough, fluttering your tongue, reed manipulation. The other thing that I've really watched, and I preach this all the time, you get that coyote that's way out in the field and he's coming, and then all of a sudden he just kind of like hit the brakes and he's checking his environment. Like I said, every coyote has ADD. It's not a straight line from point A to point B. Does that happen? Yes, absolutely. We have coyotes that hard charge from point A to point B. Statistically, the majority of the coyotes that we take do this on their approach. This is why I like to recaptivate attention. Calling, quiet. Calling, quiet. It's those down times I'm recaptivating their attention to get full commitment in the end. Hypothetically, you get that coyote that just locks up in the field. You got eyes on him and you're watching him. We're watching him and he's looking for us. He's going to use this. He's using his eyes. He's using all of his senses and the wind is not there. so he can't smell us. We're good. But I want that coyote closer. I don't want to take that long shot. I'd rather take a closer shot. Obvious things. What I've watched, that coyote out in the field, recaptivating the attention. Go back to that call that you did originally to get that coyote to break cover, and now you see him. The next thing that I do is, where's the wind, which way the wind is blowing, and then recognize that coyote has no chance of catching my wind, but I need to get him closer. I face straight upwind. It doesn't matter where that coyote is compared to my downwind. That is important because ultimately the coyote is going to want to get downwind of you. Face upwind, and I blow as hard as I possibly can through the call. What I want to happen inside of the barrel of this is that reed to kind of stick, and it creates a very, very, very high pitch of tone. But another thing I add into this is face upwind. And what does that animal want to do? It wants to get to your downwind. It wants to smell what it's hearing before it has full commitment. Statistically, this is what happens almost. Not every time, but almost every time. So if you face upwind, you're projecting sound into an area where that coyote wants to get downwind from where the sound came from. And another optimistic thing is that coyote is going to travel closer to your upwind side, if not parallel to where you are. And it also gives the high probability that you're going to get a broadside shot on the animal. Shoulder shot. I cannot preach enough shoulder shots. Don't aim at the lungs. Don't aim for the heart. Put that ballistic tip. Typically, your predator hunters are using some sort of fragmenting, high velocity fragmenting ballistic tip. Put that right on the shoulder. It's going to help with recovery. It's going to help with pelt conservation and you actually getting the coyote that you took the time to take. The call though, that one call, blow as hard as you possibly can through the barrel of the call so that reed just kind of pinches shut, and you're going to hold a lot of back pressure so you barely have any air coming out, and then just open it up. And that reed is going to hit the highest spectrum of tone you possibly can. And that's the reflection that I watch that's very positive with coyote response and commitment. I usually only use that call when I have a visual, but here it is. Here's that call. I'm going to start kind of quiet into my sequence and then just blow really hard, get that really high audible spectrum of tone. That's where I usually see commitment, and then I'll continue to call, and then I'm just going to shut up. Even if the reed just stops, you're blowing too much air through it, just listen to what you're doing. I actually did it. I blew so hard, it just shut up and that reed pinched. A little less and maybe a little less back pressure. I just did it. I build them. But you can do the same and just give it a try. Here's an example again of blowing hard through the barrel to create that high spectrum of tone. Hit that high spectrum and then just go right back into call manipulation and then just shut right up. All of the game calls I'm talking about can be found at www.rushcustomcallers.com. The link is in the description.
Perfect.
Nailed it.
Yep. Sorry about
I'm going to give the thumbs up to that one. Only took 20 minutes.